Hey guys, I'm Silas. A lot of you probably know me as Propsicle, and today I'm doing a review on the all-new HDZero Halo FC. So this is a new product from HDZero. It's a flight controller, of all things. HDZero is known primarily for their video transmission system for FPV drones. So that includes VTXs, goggles, monitors, all those sorts of things. But now they're coming out with a flight controller. So super interesting to see from them, but I think it has a couple of super innovative features and specific design points that makes it a great FC for racing and might become one of the best FCs on the market. So here's what the FC looks like. Now, I just want to go over some of the features that I think make this different and make this interesting, especially for racing pilots like myself. When it comes to racing, I'm really trying to make my quad as light as possible. How can I shrink down my quad and make it as small as I possibly can and as light as I can, because that will make my quad easier to handle, fly faster usually. There's basically only advantages at that point. The most intriguing part about this flight controller for me is it has a built-in diversity ELRS receiver. So that's really big. As someone who flies a frame that's super small and super compact, there's not much room to fit a receiver in there. And I'll show you guys what my quad looks like in a bit, but especially when you're adding any sort of external receiver or electronic board, it's just gonna add weight. It's gonna add weight and it's gonna add clutter in your quad. So the biggest thing that excited me when HDZero sent me this to test was it has a built-in diversity ELRS receiver. So as you can see, here are the two UFL connectors for your antennas. So that was a big deal for me. And here's some of the stats of the flight controller. So this FC can come in both MPU 6000 or a ICM gyro, which is great. I personally love the MPU 6000 gyro. It's basically all I've ever used. Any other gyro I've used, I've had issues with, or some sort of complications, or maybe it flies a little weird. So them offering MPU 6000 is amazing. I basically try and only get flight controllers that are MPU 6000, but if you know how to tune an ICM gyro and you've had success with it, they have that as well. So this FC does use an H7 chip, which is great. I've flown F7s for a long time, and those are great as well, but H7 is better across the board in every single way, so it's great to have a very modern chip on this flight controller. Another one of the big things, at least from a racing perspective, for me, that made me really excited about this FC and definitely put it as a contender for something I might want to fly in my racing fleet this coming year, is it has these LED strip connectors on every single side of this FC. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, but as for anyone who goes to FAI races where they require LEDs, or you just want to have LEDs on your quad to look cool, this is amazing, because normally you'd have to put a separate power distribution board somewhere in the drone. It just adds clutter, it adds weight once again. And so as a racing pilot who's trying to always reduce weight, even when I have to use LEDs or anything, again, this is another great way that you can get the weight of that quad all the way down. So this is the quad that I'm using with the Halo FC. This is a Kronos Alpha with VCI LT motors, which I'm also testing. I haven't flown them a ton, but I just got them from VCI, so I threw them on this quad. And this is also a FlyColor ESC in the stack. And then there's my HDZero VTX. So this is not using the optimal orientation that HDZero recommends when mounting this flight controller and this VTX, but it still works fine. I have enough space in the stack and it's not a big issue. But this is it mounted in the Kronos Alpha, and the Kronos Alpha is a pretty tight frame as far as racing frames go. So normally I would mount my RX back here on top of kind of the XT60 pads for this ESC, but due to the integrated ELRS RX, I don't have to do that. And it makes what is building a super tight frame much easier, to where I don't have to worry about, oh, where am I gonna put the RX? It all just sits very nicely on the stack. Everything, my ESC, my flight controller, and my VTX. And here's what I was talking about earlier. This is how I typically mount my LEDs if I'm going to a FAI race where they require, I believe it's 32 LEDs distributed across all four arms. I have to use this main board right here to connect all the LEDs, and it is not very clean. It's pretty messy. It adds a lot of weight to have this main board and on all the wires running from the very top, the top plate all the way down. But with this, because they have those LED pads right on the corners of this FC, I could run LED wires from here just directly down and straight to the LED. So it would save a ton of weight. It would make it so much cleaner, and I'm yet to build one up with LEDs, but when I'm looking at, oh, what flight controller do I want to run for this next season of racing, having that is a big deal because it means installing LEDs on here would be so much easier and so much cleaner and so much more durable. So here's some flight footage of me testing the Halo FC because as a racing pilot, the number one most important thing to me is how does it actually fly? So I went out and I flew 15 to 20 batteries to test it out and get a feel for the FC, and it performed amazing. There were no sort of any weird vibrations or anything strange happening with it. I just dropped this FC in a quad that had an F7 in it previously, the same tune and everything, and it performed great. So absolutely no complaints on that front. But I definitely felt comfortable enough on it to start pushing and pushing my pace, so felt totally comfortable and at home on this FC. So as far as I'm concerned, it is a winner in the flight performance department. So thus far, this FC has kind of checked all my boxes. I don't really have any big complaints with it. I love all the features on it. As far as I'm concerned, this might be what I'm running. I've really enjoyed testing it and flying with it, and I just need to do a little more testing to figure out that durability. So hopefully that gave you guys a good idea of what this FC is all about and some of its key features. I'm still undecided on if I'm going to run it for my next fleet for this racing season. I'm gonna have to do a lot more testing, but it definitely shows a lot of promise. It has some amazing features that I think will be useful for literally any racer. So hopefully this was helpful. I'll leave you guys with some DVR of me testing out and flying this thing. Peace.